Underground caves no one can explain, mysterious boiling rivers, strange craters and fossils, these are more real events that scientists still can't explain. In 1992, a villager in China decided to drain a pond that locals had always believed was bottomless. Once the water was gone though, it exposed something nobody was expecting, this massive underground chamber carved entirely out of solid rock. They drained more ponds nearby and found more of them. In total, there are 24 of these caves, all built with the same layout and covered in uniform chisel marks that line the walls, floor, and ceiling. Each cavern is huge, some reaching around 30 meters high or just under 100 feet, supported by stone columns. Researchers estimate that creating just one of these spaces would have required removing thousands of tons of rock by hand. Multiply that by 24 and you're looking at a massive project, but there's no written record of it anywhere. There are no tools left behind, no carvings or symbols explaining what they were for. They're not tombs, they're not mines, but most importantly, they're not natural formations either. The walls were clearly shaped on purpose, and the work is consistent across every cave, but historians still haven't come to a clear consensus as to what they were actually for. For something this large that workers would have spent a painstakingly long time to create though, it's really strange that there's basically no mention of it in any historical record. There is a river deep in the Amazon rainforest in Peru that gets hot enough to boil animals alive. It's called Shenei Tempichka, which roughly translates to boiled with the heart of the sun. Locals have known about it for generations, but scientists didn't really take it seriously until a geologist named Andres Russo studied it around 2011. He measured temperatures in parts of the river reaching close to 100 degrees Celsius. That's basically boiling. Small animals that fall in can die within seconds. What makes this hard to explain is the location. Rivers this hot are usually found near volcanoes, where magma heats up the water underground, but this river is hundreds of miles from any active volcano. The current explanation is that rainwater seeps deep underground through cracks, gets heated by geothermal energy, and then rises back up through fault lines. That idea works in theory, but it doesn't fully explain how the river stays so consistently hot over such a long stretch. You know, it's not just like a hot spring or a small pocket, it's a full river carrying near boiling water through the jungle. For hundreds of years, people across Europe and North America have reported finding strange clumps of clear jelly on the ground, often after meteors or rainstorms. It's usually described as translucent and thankfully odorless, appearing suddenly and then disappearing just as fast. In the 1800s, it was recorded in scientific journals under the name star jelly. Some samples have been analyzed over the years. In certain cases, scientists found biological material that matched amphibian tissue like frog or toad reproductive cells that kind of swell up when exposed to water. And that explanation makes sense for some of the sightings, but it doesn't cover everything. There are reports where no animals were anywhere nearby, and others where the material didn't match any known species when it was tested. In a few modern cases, samples collected and tested showed no DNA at all. There's not a large amount of data though, because one consistent detail is how quickly this stuff disappears. I mean, within hours, sometimes even minutes, it breaks down and it's just gone. So that makes it difficult to properly study. That's part of the reason there's still no single confirmed explanation that covers every case. In 2011, a Swedish exploration team called Ocean X was scanning the floor of the Baltic Sea when they picked up something strange on sonar. It showed up as this large circular object sitting on the seabed, almost like a ship. When they went back to check it out, divers said their equipment started glitching near the site. Cameras and satellite phones would just stop working, then come back once they moved away. They also described the object as solid and rocky with odd shapes that didn't really look like a normal natural formation. Samples from the area were later studied by geologists, including researchers from the Stockholm University, who said it was probably glacial rock shaped by moving ice during the last ice age. And that explains part of it, sure, but it still doesn't really line up with the clean, circular shape seen on sonar or the reports of the equipment interference. Along the coast of Nova Scotia, there's a place called the Joggins Fossil Cliffs. Here you'll find fossilized trees that are still standing upright, right where they originally grew for over 300 million years. They're actual tree trunks turned to stone. Some of them are hollow, and inside those trunks, researchers have found fossils of small animals. So whatever happened here that buried these trees pretty fast The main explanation is that this area used to be a swampy forest hundreds of millions of years ago. Flooding would come through and dump layers of sediment over everything, burying the trees. And it would happen again and again, stacking layers on top and preserving what was underneath. That explains the general idea, but not completely. For trees to stay upright long enough to fossilize like that, they'd need to be buried pretty quickly and under very specific conditions, and not just once, but repeatedly across a large area. So it starts to look less like a slow, steady process and more like the environment kept getting hit with sudden events that buried entire sections of the forest almost all at once, and that part is still a bit of a mystery. In a remote part of Siberia, there's a strange formation known as the Patomskiy crater. It looks like a large cone made of limestone with a smaller cone rising out of its center. From above, it doesn't resemble a typical crater. It looks more like something pushed up from below. It was first studied in detail in the mid-20th century, and since then multiple research teams have tried to figure out how it formed. The obvious possibilities were ruled out early. It's not a volcano, there's no sign of lava, it's not an impact crater either, there's no evidence of a meteor strike, no fragments or shock patterns in the surrounding rock. One theory is that it could have been caused by a buildup of gas underground that eventually forced its way to the surface, and that would explain the pushed up look, at least a little. But the structure still doesn't quite match what you'd expect from something like that. There have also been reports from expeditions about other weird details nearby, like trees growing in unusual patterns around the site. Nothing extreme, but enough that researchers have taken note of it. Even now, though, there's no single explanation that really ties everything together. Lake Hillier in Australia is bright pink. Not sometimes, not under certain lighting, it just stays pink all the time. Even when the water is taken out and put into a container, scientists have studied the lake for years. The leading explanation is that the color comes from microorganisms living in the water, especially a type of algae called Dunaliella, along with certain bacteria that produce pigments. Where it gets a bit weird, though, is the consistency. There are other lakes with similar microbes, but they don't look like this. When those same organisms are studied in labs, they don't always recreate that exact shade either. The lake is also extremely salty, which helps those microbes survive, but again, there are plenty of salty lakes around the world that aren't bright pink like this. So yeah, scientists know what's behind the color in general, but the exact mix of conditions that keeps Lake Hillier looking like that all the time, they're still not sure. In 1986, workers in Romania discovered a cave that had been completely sealed off from the surface for only about 5.5 million years. But when scientists went inside, they actually found a fully functioning ecosystem, one that obviously wasn't relying on sunlight at all. The whole food chain starts with bacteria that get their energy from chemical reactions, mainly involving sulfur and methane. Everything else down there feeds off the system in one way or another. Inside Movile Cave, the air is nothing like what we're used to either. Oxygen is low, and there's a mix of gases that would be toxic to most animals. Somehow, that hasn't stopped it from supporting dozens of species. You've got insects, spiders, all kinds of small creatures that don't exist anywhere else on Earth. A lot of them don't even have eyes, and their bodies are pale since there's no light down there. What really stands out is how stable it all is, too. This isn't some temporary thing. The system has been running on its own for millions of years, completely cut off from the outside world, and it still manages to support multiple layers of life. Back in 1972, scientists at a uranium plant in France noticed something pretty odd. The uranium they got from a mine in Gabon, Africa was missing a bit of a key ingredient, something called uranium-235. That's the part of uranium that can create energy in nuclear reactors. So they tracked it back to where it came from, a place now called the Oklo Natural Nuclear Reactor. And what they found was pretty incredible. A long time ago, about 2 million years back, that spot basically turned into a natural nuclear reactor. The rock there had enough of that special uranium in it. Water from underground flowed through the rock, and that water helped slow things down just enough for a reaction to start. It didn't run non-stop. It would turn on, for lack of a better term, when water was there, and then shut off when the water drained away, over and over. And the chances of these ultra-specific conditions occurring in nature is just minuscule. That's what makes this so amazing. Since the James Webb Space Telescope started sending back deep space images, astronomers have been looking at galaxies from very early on in the universe's history, just a few 100 million years after the Big Bang. What they expected to see were small, still forming galaxies. not fully developed or very massive yet. But what Webb is actually picking up is different. Some of these early galaxies already look large, organized, packed, full of stars. In some cases, they look more developed than models said they should be at that point in time. Astronomers have checked distances using how the light has stretched over time, and those measurements still point to these galaxies being extremely far away and extremely early. So the issue is not bad data. What's going on though? Well, it seems like galaxies were able to form and grow much faster in the early universe than we thought. As for why or how, they still can't say for sure. But that has been the video, and I will catch you, yes you specifically, in the next one.